Hey, Internet, I don't care anymore. This is Course for Nowhere. I'm the Media Nomad. This is Ivy. Moving on.
Yeah, tonight's episode brought to you by Spite.
It's just pure spite. Hello, anyone joining us for the first time? Go listen to another episode. This is not the best one. This is the Murphy's Law episode.
Yeah, I mean, it started when I got sick, and I was like, I can't record this when I'm going to be coughing into the mic the whole time. And then there were other delays as well, and tonight we had technical issues trying
We
to.
had, well, we watched 3%. So
Right.
it was one of the first South, I think it's the first South American thing we've ever done. Comes out of Brazil, and sorry to Brazil and everyone from Brazil. Your show was good. We can't get our crap together tonight. We
Right,
apologize.
we do. I deeply apologize.
No, because we wound up delaying about a week between two conflicting schedules because we're both freelancers. We were both sick, and I was taking care of a sick significant other.
So, yeah. But, okay, we're finally going to record it.
We
This
did.
is going to happen.
It only took us
And
an hour of technical problems.
right. And so now we're going to say nice things about the show.
All right. First of all, I've got to say though, a memorial for my garage sale mic, which finally gave out. I paid like $3 for this thing at a garage sale like 5 years ago, and it's been the stalwart mic for the show ever since before we were actually Course for Nowhere, back when we were still in this library and we sucked even more than we do now. And for whatever reason, uh, it just stopped working right. I cannot figure out what's wrong, so I had to go and grab the mic I use for interviews, and that's a shotgun mic. And
So,
I sent you a picture of the setup, and it is the most
yeah,
ratchet setup I think ever for a podcast.
right. Yeah,
Like ever. It's taken a solid hour between swapping different mics and playing with settings and trying to get everything to work. I know this is not the right thing to do. Audiophiles are going to be furious at me for doing this, but we haven't found a proper workaround for this yet. So I've got my shotgun mic plugged into my laptop, and then that one mic is picking up my voice and the speakers from Skype, and then feeding both of those through one input into Audition.
right. Yes. This is a totally legit setup. Yes.
Right, I'd like to take the time and figure out a proper fix for this, but that also requires investing in proper audio equipment, and I'm poor, so that's not gonna happen.
Right. And it's sort of a similar thing for me. I mean, I know my mic on my end is not the best either, but yeah, we're doing the best we can.
Oh, bonus points. My shotgun mic is being held up by a part of a GoPro tripod. Like it's just wedged in there.
Nice.
There's
And I'm holding my mic up by hand in front of my mouth.
so for who's ever this is your first time. Sorry, this sucks. We have to get it out though. Like we watched the things. I took notes. I then lost those notes, but I took them, and the episode has to happen.
I didn't know you took notes and lost them.
I
But
I do usually take notes when I'm recording.
that makes sense. I am not nearly that organized and, and just generally a terrible person. So, I don't, I, yeah, no, I don't go that far. But, well, no, that's not entirely true. I do sometimes make a small list of, like, the topics I want to cover about something.
Occasionally, I'll be like, "This is this character's name. I'm gonna forget this plot point. Oh my God! This was a I have had a profound idea, and I must write it down. Otherwise, I will forget it."
Right.
So anyway, would you like to do the intro for what we watched this week?
Okay. So it's a show called 3%. You can find it on Netflix. It's about I think it's 8 episodes long. It's the first Brazilian series for Netflix, and you can watch it dubbed in English, Spanish, and the original language it was recorded in is Portuguese Brazilian, or Brazilian Portuguese, which is what I watched it in. And yes, I know it's just Portuguese, but I believe Brazil has its own fun dialect of Portuguese. So,
Well, that would make
uh,
sense because I mean, Spain Spanish and Mexican Spanish are two different dialects as well.
right, exactly.
And
So
also, Portuguese is not the same as Spanish. It's close, but it's not the same.
it's interesting because I think most people I've talked to who learned Spanish or Portuguese as a foreign language say, yes, they are related, and I can basically communicate between both languages. People who are a native speaker of either Spanish or Portuguese tend to say, no, they are too different. I don't understand it.
Is it like American English versus like if I were to go to Scotland?
Um, Possibly if Yeah. So, if you did like backwoods hillbilly American and backwoods like almost snatch type levels of difficult to understand dialect, I think.
Right. So anyway, I watched it English dub. How did you watch it?
I watched it subtitled from with the audio in Portuguese.
Okay. Uh, I I just watched it dub because that was the default.
Right. Yeah, I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's in English. Wait a minute. So then I looked to see what it was originally recorded in when I noticed the voices aren't matching up. It's just a personal preference for me. I want to watch the thing in the language it was originally recorded in, regardless of whether or not I've had any experience at all in that language.
I'm going to agree with you, except I started watching it in English because I watched the first episode a few weeks ago, and my girlfriend recommended it, and we started watching it while I was editing. And if I'm editing with something in the background, it can't be subbed. It has to be English because if I look down at my computer, I have to be able to still process the dialogue.
Right, yeah,
So we did like an episode and a half in the English, and by the time we decided we wanted to do something a little more obscure, probably something more foreign for the show, I was already used to the English cast, and I didn't want to switch it up, so I just wanted it to keep consistent.
right. And I think that's fine. It sounded. How was the English cast? Do you think they did? Did they do a pretty good job? Was it distracting?
The English cast did fine. The only problem with the soundstage or wherever you are, I guess, clean from extra stuff, there's still the sound's still going to act a certain way versus if
Right,
you record in a studio like a soundproof box. So it almost sounds too sterile, and it threw me a little bit, but I cannot fault it at all for that because that's just a problem with dubbing. It is a lot more noticeable in like a live action series versus like an animated series because that thing everything's in a booth and all of the Foley work is done post.
right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, as far as a description of the show in general, um, it's a show that takes place in a dystopian future where everybody lives on the mainland in abject poverty. And then when people turn 20 years old that year, they get to go through the process to determine whether or not they're part of the 3% of people that is allowed to go to the offshore, which is apparently a utopian paradise culture.
We were told it's a paradise. We never actually get to see anything on the offshore.
Yeah, that is worth noting. We don't actually get to see the offshore, um, and we just get a very brief glimpse of it at the end. Um, but by all accounts, it's supposed to be a utopia, and you live the rest of your life, kind of in the lap of luxury, sort of thing.
Right. Uh,
and everyone is desperate to pass the process and get there.
right, when you turn 20, you take the process, and essentially it's different challenges they put these young adults through in an attempt to weed them out. So when you're in the general population, you can opt in to whether or not you want to participate in the process, and then those who take the process, only 3% roughly make it from the beginning to the end. They actually make it to the offshore, hence the title of the show. It's a very smart show. I will say going into it, if you like things like Sherlock and if you like watching smart people solve really smart puzzles, you'll definitely get a workout from this. There's not a ton of world building. If you like your dystopian sci-fi for the sake of the world building, less than the characters, then I would not recommend this because it's very character focused and very, very little time is actually spent on the world building itself. But if yeah, if you want to see some really smart people work their way through some really smart mazes, then absolutely go check the show out. And then I guess from here on out, uh, spoiler warnings up. Everything is fair game.
Actually, there is something I wanted to talk about before we put up the spoiler warning, and one is that I kind of like to know what I'm getting into in terms of maturity rating on a show before I watch it. And there's some violence, there's some brief depictions of torture, um, but I don't think any of those things are excessive. And it's worth noting, I think, that there aren't any depictions of sexual assault or sexual violence or rape. Um, and I say that simply because it happens a lot in edgy, violent shows. It seems like they so often devolve into the every villain is also a rapist trope. And I think it's worth noting that this show does not do that in any way.
Oh, you mean the Alan Moore effect?
I didn't know it was called that.
It's not. I just Alan Moore does that a lot. There's a lot of rape in Alan Moore books.
Right.
A
And
lot
so
of
I,
rape going on in Alan Moore books.
yeah, I just thought it was really worth noting that that doesn't happen, and I kind of want to praise them for that because I think it's a really cheap way to heighten drama or whatever, and it's an immediate turn off for me. And I was really glad they didn't go in that direction, even though they had some very obvious opportunities to do so.
They really did. I will say we'll kind of put a pin on this subject for now because there's a lot to unpack with this particular subject, and I feel like I don't want to gloss over it. I want to actually take the time and we'll like unpack it when and like
Okay.
because I feel like that could almost be an entire episode. So I don't want to cut that. I don't want to not do it justice by just kind of blazing through it too much here. So we kind of touched on it, and then I feel like I'd like to revisit this topic a little bit later when we can really flesh it out.
Yeah, but yeah, just like I said, I kind of do personally like if I'm gonna watch something, I like to know what trigger warnings or whatever there might be. So that's a rundown of that for our listeners.
Yeah, you know what? You're right because I did not think about that, but I'm glad you brought it up. So I'm glad that we have that now because I never would have thought to say that.
And as far as our reviews for I mean, as far as whether or not we think you should go watch it, definitely go like turn this off right now and go watch it and come back.
Definitely. I will say, as far as Edge goes, I think a mature eighth grader can handle it.
Yeah, there's some brief nudity and, like I said, some violence and some torture, but it isn't excessive. I don't think any of it is excessive. So I think with some, well, with some context, with some parental guidance, we'll say,
I
I
think
think you're probably about right.
I think the worst the torture ever got is there's one scene where a woman is she's naked and she's hung upside. She's tied upside down to this pole and they're dunking her in water over and over again.
Yeah, that's the worst of it.
Yeah, which is still not a good thing to watch. So absolutely
No.
trigger warning on that. Now I feel bad. Now I feel like I shot. Now I feel like I tried to shoot you down.
Oh, no, no. That's all pretty much I had to say about that. Um, So yeah. So now spoiler warnings up. Let's get into the meat of the show. I mean, if you look at the Hunger Games, a lot of it is about Katniss's journey, her hero's journey, and in the books especially, you're in her head the whole time. And you are right to some extent in that they're a little bit less generous with the details on the world building there. But I have to wonder how much of that is a problem with the medium. It's a TV budget. They only have so much they can do. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, when I say it's there's not much world building, it's more character building. My main frame of reference for dystopian future is like 1984. And the thing with 1984 is that the characters themselves, like Winston's important, but really the characters are just vessels to take you through this world that they're trying to show you. And a lot of dystopian stuff is I'm trying to make a point that the future will be like this if we do this or we don't do this other thing. Whereas the world of 3% feels very generic and it just kind of we have this idea of putting these people through this rat maze. What kind of context can we have to put them through that? And the everything else just seems kind of like in service to just get us to what we're seeing.
I don't know. I see their theme, their overarching theme of you create your own merit. That to me, it really resonated with me with libertarianism in America and the the sort of extreme view of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. If you live in abject poverty, you deserve to be there. And to me, that was a very um, chilling theme throughout the whole thing of this is kind of what we're headed towards if we kind of go to this extreme of you are only worthwhile and worth being taken care of as a human being by whether or not what you can do, whether your abilities make you intrinsically valuable.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that.
And so I think they have I think you're right in that it's a little bit bare bones. It definitely left me with some questions as far as this seems to be a surveillance police state as far as I can tell, but they seem pretty bad at that part of it. Like there's several things in the show that I think like, well, somebody should have seen that, right? On a camera somewhere. Um, but at the same time, I think that's also a portion where I'm excited to see if they do a second season because I think they could do a lot more world building, and I'm excited to see if and where that goes.
Right. Well, I feel like it'd be pretty easy to do a second season. Getting back to Hunger Games, they were able to, by the third book, basically put her in the games without actually making them technically games. When she went into a war zone that had all of these traps and all of these robots, and so it felt very much like she was back in the game with higher stakes. So it wouldn't be hard to drop these characters into this new society and see what happened with the characters who didn't make it through the last round and watch them try to work their way maybe back up into there. So you don't even need to necessarily have them go through the process for a second season as long as you can maintain some of those character dynamics, build on those characters, and still put them in those puzzling situations.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, we never did go through like the spoilery rundown of events. Do you want to do that?
Uh, so we have a cast. What is it, about 10 main people we follow ish?
Something like that.
And we see them. They go through every single puzzle. They start out with something really simple, like here's an interview. Here's a bunch of Tetris pieces. How many cubes can you make in a time limit? And then it becomes eventually morphs into like a prison experiment. And
Right.
then we get into the
They
real.
do some psychological testing.
They do some of the psychological testing, and all the while, some of the young people going through the process are part of a resistance movement just called the Cause. So they are essentially moles, and they're trying to sneak their way into this higher society and I guess destroy it from the inside. They weren't super clear about what they were supposed to do once they were actually at the offshore.
Yeah, I think what they just, it sounds like what they think is that everyone should have the same resources available to them that the offshore does.
It did sound like that. And then one of the main characters we follow, I think her name was Michelle, I want to say.
Yeah,
She, her brother was killed by someone from the government. And so she wants to go through the process to get revenge on the people who did it.
right.
Which that is really the only solid bad thing we see the government do. I mean, they're just kind of generic shitty, but this is killing the brothers the only actual sinister thing that we actually see them do. I think they almost kill a kid, but then they didn't actually kill the kid.
Right. Well, and they set up the situations in the process so that they're fairly callous about whether or not they're going to actually survive that test.
To be fair to the government dickholes, we only had like two fatalities throughout the entire test.
At least three.
Three, because there was the one guy who got crushed by the door,
Yeah. There's and also Agatha.
which
She she was in the okay. So there's one test they go through where they're exposed to some kind of a nerve gas, and it causes them to have hallucinations.
oh, that's right.
And afterward, one of the candidates was particularly traumatized by the nerve gas. She goes off the rails, and this was something. This was one complaint that I had. They eventually just have a scene where she's passed out in a hallway, and somebody tries to wake her up, and they can't wake her up, and they need to leave, so they just move on. And so the implication is that she died in the hallway, but they never actually explain that at all.
Right.
It's just sort of assumed that she had some kind of a bad reaction to the gas and never recovered from it.
She had a bad trip.
Yeah.
Well, that and one girl, they're not really super specific about what happens to her, but in the first episode, they almost root out Michelle as a member of the cause, and they narrow it down to her or her one friend. And Michelle actually tricks her friend into making it look like she's a member of the cause, and they haul her away.
Oh, she gets shot though. I'm pretty sure she's dead. And actually later they no, she's and at least the government is making it seem like she is definitely dead.
Yeah, I will say, like I said, because it was a week between when we watched this and when we're recording, and we're both pretty burnt out because it's been a pretty rough week for both of us. Sorry, Brazil. We'll make it up to you, I promise.
There was also one more fatality. There was a guy who committed suicide at the beginning.
Oh, that's right, where he jumped off a jumped off a really high corridor.
Causeway.
Yeah, and he just
Yeah.
hit the ground.
Um, and so I thought it was really interesting. So if you're a candidate and you go and like say you do the interview and they're like, nope, you're eliminated, and so then you go back and you claim your stuff, and they say they have this departing message: try not to reminisce or dwell about your time in the process. The best way to feel better about the whole thing is to um, drown yourself in the joy of having children.
Pretty much. In a weird way, it kind of reminded me of that line from Portal where it promises cake and counseling after the tests.
Right? Yes, yes. It was. It really did remind me of that too. But the cake is a lie.
The cake is a lie. Everything's a lie.
And so yeah, and we have. I think overall, I really enjoyed how the plot progresses. I really felt like I just wanted to sit and binge watch the whole thing because I thought it was very, very well done.
I know I watched the first two episodes with a day or two between them, and then I wound up binging the rest of the series in about 2 or 3 days. I will say this is one of the few television series that we watched where I was not finishing it day of recording.
Yeah, me too. I usually the save a show for the night before the day that we're going to record. And actually, I think I did this time as well. It's just we didn't end up recording that day.
Well, for me, it's usually that it's a lot of time to watch a whole season of a show. Even if it's something like this, it's only 8 episodes, but that's still a solid 8 hours of a little bit less than 8 hours of programming to get through.
Right.
So sometimes it takes me a little more time to get through that because I'm freelancing. I got a part-time job. I'm doing some other stuff right now,
Yeah.
which is why
Um.
we usually only get these out about bi-weekly.
Yeah. About.
Yeah, I mean we don't have an audience anyway, so nobody's really complaining.
Yeah.
You were our only fan. It was just you, and now you're on the show, and now we have no one.
Right. um. So one thing I noticed. Um. So one thing I thought that you might like to talk about is the cinematography and how in some places it kind of differs from maybe American sensibilities.
I wouldn't say.
My
Oh, go ahead.
um my big thing for that was the last episode where especially where he um the guy who's running the process throws his wine bottle at his sink that he like so the guy who runs the process he goes over to this sink every day and just puts his face in the water for as long as he can possibly stand it. Um, and it's pretty strange to watch. And so at the very end of the show, he has this bottle of wine to celebrate the end of the process, but he gets mad and he throws it and breaks his sink, and then he sits under the sink, and somehow, even though it's water coming out of the faucet, now it's really just, it looks like blood instead of wine, and it's gushing all over his face.
Right, and that was happening as he's remembering the casualties from the process. And I'm thinking this is like some purge level symbolism.
Right, yeah.
This is not subtle. This is not even a
No.
little subtle. I did appreciate him holding his head under the water because it was like this weird combination of sensory deprivation, relaxation, and self harm at the same time. And I've never seen anything quite that specific. And it was interesting to
Yeah.
see the way they carry it out because he not only does it to himself on one or two other occasions, because he's in charge, if someone pisses him off, he's done that to them.
Right, yeah. And then, of course, it was his wife, his dead wife, that got him started on it. Like she was the first one who held his head underwater for a while
Well, for her,
to
it was
try.
just like, here, you know what? You're super stressed. Just do this. Just like close your eyes and just block everything out. Just do it for a couple seconds.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I think she's like stroking the back of his head, like
mhm,
gently caressing the back of his head when he does that. You know.
right, and then he just keeps taking this to an extreme. And it's even more interesting is that his wife, we find out that she actually had an illegitimate child before she married him, and she believed that child died in a raid by the government, and she loses her mind over whether or not she can be sure the child is dead. Eventually, just goes completely off the rails, and then by the end, just walks into the ocean and never comes back.
Yeah, and the whole sequence, the way that they doled out that story, I thought was very well done. And it also did a good job of showing that they have complete separation between the offshore and the mainland. that she is not even allowed to go and see whether or not her child is still alive.
Yeah, it's essentially she's told just it doesn't exist there anymore. And then I guess that takes us to the bigger spoiler. By the last episode, we find out that there's a purification ritual at the end of the process, and that turns out to be sterilization, where they inject something into your arm. It's like some sort of ID chip thing that we see everyone else who's past the cause have. And then when these teenagers go through with it, we find out that that means they can no longer have children because when you come to the offshore, you do not get born into it. You have to earn it. Nobody gets a free pass to the offshore.
And I thought that was extremely smart because I was wondering through a lot of the show, like, how do they control the population? I mean, it seems like the offshore would just keep growing and growing and growing in size. Um, and again, it does seem sort of unfair that you could just be born into the offshore when the other people have to go through the process.
The 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 big twist didn't really have much of an impact on me at all because I pretty much saw it coming from a mile away. Because I
Yeah, I
figured
suppose so.
this. It seemed like that's where they were heading, and it just didn't seem like a big surprise to me. I kind of figured it out pretty early on.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you probably could figure it out pretty easily. I guess I usually tend not to look into predictions like that. It's sort of like how I enjoy haunted houses. I purposely allow myself to be scared. So I purposely allow myself to be surprised by where the story goes.
I don't actively search for stuff. Like I don't tend to spend much time on things like fan theories or fan predictions for series. I usually just kind of want to go along for the ride, but that doesn't mean some stuff not is necessarily going to be untelegraphed. I'm still going to pick up on stuff. Like there's this really strong emphasis on family. One character in particular, his name is Raphael, talks about how he wants to make a better life for his children on the offshore, and it's all about. And there's a lot of legacy foreshadowing there. And I figure, well, if there's that much emphasis on legacy, the offshore can't really sustain. They probably have some sort of sterilization in place to kind of undercut this theme of legacy, or not necessarily undercut, but subvert this theme of legacy. That's probably where they're going to go with this. And then by the time it was revealed, it was just kind of a okay. So yeah, I was right.
That makes sense. It did get me thinking a little bit of, oh, okay, so in Singapore, they had a policy in which if you had a college degree, then for any children you have above two, you get enormous tax credits. And if you don't have a college degree, once you have your second child, the government will pay you to get sterilized, basically.
I
Or,
hadn't heard
get your
about
tubes
that
tied or get a,
vasectomy.
vasectomy or whatever. And the criticism of that is that it, um, you know, smacks of eugenics.
Yeah,
Um, and so that whole idea of our condition of allowing you to have this quality of life is that you must get sterilized. What an egregious, I don't know, infringement on human rights that is, you know?
right. And I don't. I guess it didn't hit me that hard because I'm still on the fence about whether or not I want children personally.
I don't even really want children myself, but I've had enough. I mean, I know people who are very into children and will argue at great length and volume that you cannot regulate, um, you can't legislate people's desire to procreate,
Right.
I
And
guess.
occasionally there's that little voice in the back of your head that goes, you know what? Just what if this just wasn't happening? But then all of the reality outweighs that. Of course, that's a very dark and dangerous path, and it's absolutely not worth pursuing in any meaningful way. The closest I've ever seen it implicated in the states is that there is a private organization that will pay women who are addicted to certain hard drugs to have their tubes tied.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know how I feel about that personally.
I,
I
I
think it's a very difficult topic, partially because there's racism involved there, simply because even though the majority of drug users are white, the kinds of drugs that they're targeting are the majority of users are African American, and so you have to wonder what is this. You have to wonder if that darkens the motivation of that group. Um,
I will say the way I found out about it was an NPR interview with the founders, and it started with there's this woman who, middle class woman, she lost a child, and then she wound up adopting one from this mother who is addicted to crack, and she had this baby, and this mother uh, opted to adopt the child, and then about two or three more times the hospital called her after the fact and said the same drug addicted woman has come in and she's had these this many more. She's had, I think it was twice more they called her, and so she was worried about these women who are addicted to drugs coming in, and there's no good way to say this, is there?
no, I don't think there is, but
You know,
I think I know what you're getting at. Yeah,
right. You know what?
and when somebody is high on drugs, they make poor decisions. I
Yes.
mean,
You
and
know,
so if you eliminate one result of that poor decision making, then I can see why the founders would want to do that.
you know what? I feel like this is another one of those things, like what you mentioned earlier. This is a very complicated topic that absolutely warrants more exploring. Right now, I'm a little burnt out. You said you're like sleep deprived and punch drunk. Maybe it's best we kind of like pull the emergency shoot on this one before we dig ourselves deeper than we want to if we're not in the right headspaces to get into it.
Right, that makes sense.
Once again, not that it's not worth talking about, not that I don't like getting political. I absolutely do like getting political. I got into a big fight with a friend earlier on this week for saying I was too political, but I'm also aware that some subject matter requires a certain headspace and setting to do justice to, and I feel like if I cannot do justice to that topic, I tend to try to pull the emergency chute before I dig myself in too deep.
Yeah, maybe too late this time for
It
me,
probably
but
is. It probably is. Like it's a thing where I try to explain it like white dudes in general. They always try and do the "I'm not blank but," and I just tell them just don't. Because nothing good comes after that. Just say you're
yeah,
wrong and just walk away because you're just gonna dig yourself deeper. You're just gonna dig
yeah,
yourself deeper. You're gonna make it so much worse. Admit you're wrong. Just admit you're wrong. No good's coming of
yeah.
this. It's like
Well, so I guess anyway, originally about the show, I was saying that that plot twist for me did kind of get me thinking about a lot of other stuff. And I think it's good to have a show that gets you thinking about complicated topics.
yes, you want smart. We want more smart shows. We did a good job on a smart show, Brazil. And it's not even just that it was this complicated topic, because, like I mentioned before, for me the real meat of the show was watching what kind of puzzles you put in front of these main characters, and then watching the ways they work it out. It's very clear they had some very smart people on staff, because I've seen writers try to write for characters who are smarter than they are, and it doesn't always connect. But it's very clear there were some very clever people working on that show, and so it's always a joy just to watch them work their way through these. One of my in the beginning, like I said, they have to make cubes out of these blocks, and they have a set amount of time. I think they are told they had to make 9 cubes, and one guy only came up with 8, stole one from the girl next to him, and when she started to panic, another guy took her 8 cubes and stacked them up to make one big ninth cube.
Right. Actually, it was the guy who stole the cube, stole one from another guy, and the guy he stole it from ends up getting eliminated.
Oh, that's right,
And
because the guy
so
he stole
he's
it from got
really
eliminated,
pissed.
and then I think it was Michelle. He only came up with 8, and then he just fixed it for her. She didn't get one stolen from her.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It was fixed by her love
Fernando.
interest. What's his name?
Fernando, the kid in the wheelchair.
Yes, yes. Um, yeah, I thought that was clever. It was well done. Um, and also there was a lot of controversy about um, because the guy running the process said absolutely the guy who stole the cube gets to move on, and other people are kind of like, I don't think he should.
It's kind of it's just like, do we want dicks? I mean, he's smart, but he's still a dick.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a good question. As far as exactly what they're looking for. If you're going for ambition, then absolutely, yeah. But if you're looking for like, I don't know, moral uprightness,
Here's a big spoiler. The answer is never moral uprightness ever. At
right,
no point. It's always, do you do the douchebag like faux alpha male bro thing, or do you do the thing that makes you not an asshole? And every time the people in the process are just like, well, you can't have like the nice people are weak. You can't have those living around, which
well, though
seems
there is a little bit of
strange.
a reversal of that in the prison experiment.
Oh god, so the prison
Um,
experiment. It's yeah, they're locked in this prison type area, and the challenge is that they all have to coordinate looking at these numbers and pulling corresponding levers, which are littered throughout the compound. And there's this one character, I forget his name, but he's good looking, he's young, he's bright, and he figures it out, and he's really charismatic, and he does a really good job of organizing everybody. And when they complete the lever pulling correctly, they get food, and he tries to organize a way that they all get food, and everything seems to be going smoothly. And then the guy running the process is just like, wait, let's just stop sending them food and see what happens because they're all doing
right.
too well. How can we screw this up? And then the leader kid goes from nice guy to absolute psycho Lord of the Flies in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it's not even it's not that it's not it's absolutely funny just how quick he goes from hey, we'll all work together and we can all go to the offshore to everything is a lie and only the strong will survive.
Right.
That takes absolutely no time for him to do that heel turn.
Yeah. Um, though I guess they did okay with it by showing, he had his letter from his father or whatever that he reads that says, you actually are better than everybody else and you deserve to, you know,
Well, the interesting thing is that
um,
there's a whole lineage there, and before they go to take the trial, every member of this family takes a picture of themselves, and they hang it up on the wall, and they leave a letter for their offspring because they always leave someone knocked up before they go. I think it's almost all men. They leave some sort of lineage behind them in one form or another, and they write this letter saying, "Hey, I made it to the offshore. Can't wait to see you when you turn 20." And this kid doesn't make it past this prison trial. He goes so far off the rails that he gets beaten to near death, then tries to crawl his way to freedom and gets crushed by a power door. And then
and it does,
they cut to the woman carrying his child reading the letter of "I got to the offshore. Everything's gonna be wonderful. See you in 20 years. XOXO."
right.
I think
And
that's an
it does
exact
sort of
quote.
make you wonder how many of his ancestors actually did make it to the offshore. Maybe not nearly as many of them as they think.
Right. And because there's that 20-year gap, are they just sitting around? Just imagine waiting 20 years to see if your kid can join you where you are, and then that deadline coming, and then you just not seeing them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole system, it's interesting but bonkers.
Or hell, imagine if you did make it and you get to the offshore and you realize none of the rest of your family made it.
Right, yeah. Because and it's also not just a matter of like, oh, somebody died in the process. I'm sure there are a number of people who go through the process and they're so sure they're going to make it and they get eliminated. And in the society they created in this show, it would be far, far too easy for the person to just come back and then make sure they never see their family again. Just disappear into the underbelly of society and, you know, pretend, just let their families think that they made it.
Well, either that or we saw in the very first episode, they might just commit suicide outright.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It also got me wondering a bit how they keep the secrets of the process so well, because they're still eliminating people up to the very late stages, and you sort of wonder how do they keep secret all the tests that they're doing, because clearly nobody seems to know, when they go in there.
I think they
Um,
change the. I think they imply they change the tests to some degree or another every year.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. But um, I don't. I can only think that as far as the sterilization process goes, either every single person who's ever gotten to that point has been like, yeah, okay, I guess I'm just never having babies. Let's go, and has never gone back to civilization with that information because surely at least the cause would know. Um, or they kill people who decide not to proceed at that point.
It could
Those
be
seem to be
that,
the only two options.
or maybe everyone does proceed because you go through all sorts of levels of hell to get to that ceremony to begin with. So I can
Yeah, and
imagine,
they show the conditions as pretty desperate on the mainland.
because if you had made it to that point, that you have proven you are part of that 3%, you have passed all the trials, you have, in a lot of likelihood, seen somebody die, and you get to that point, and are you, like, no matter how much you want kids, you're probably not going to bail that far.
Yeah,
The only person we did see bail, and I thought was really interesting, we saw two people bail. First, we see Fernando leave, the guy in the wheelchair who he has feelings for Michelle, and then he is told that she has been eliminated, and he just inches from the finish line says, "You know, no, I quit. I want to go see her. I want to go be with her." And they lead him out the gates, and then they tell him, "Guess what? This was just a test for your resolve. You didn't pass. Bye." And then they just lock him out.
yeah,
They don't even give
yeah,
him a ride anywhere. They just leave him there.
yeah, yeah. Um, and then there's another character. I can't think of her name at the moment.
Let me check. I got the IMDb and the Wikipedia open.
But the leader of the process takes her separately after she's been told that she's passed and she is part of the 3%, and all she needs to do is go through the purification ritual. And the leader of the process um, shows her a gangster that tried to hurt her in the past and tells her all she has to do is press a button to kill him. And if she kills him, then she can go to the offshore. And she decides not to kill him. So then he says that she's eliminated and they kick her out.
I'm looking at the IMDb page to see her name, and I see that they have a drop down for a season two, but there's no information there. So that may or may not mean that they've greenlit a season two and they're just in pre-production.
And so Fernando is still waiting outside, and she joins him, and they go off together. And it's pretty heavily implied that they're going to join the cause.
Right, because they've both been burned pretty bad at that point. Was it Joanna?
Yeah.
Joanna.
Yes, Joanna.
Right, and I
And
feel,
so,
yeah, because I really want to talk about some of the nitty gritty for watching some of the way that they solve some of this, but I feel like revealing the way the puzzles are solved kind of like it's like spoiling a joke almost.
well, we did say you should watch it before you listen to this part.
This
So
is
if you want
true.
to talk about that,
Yeah, I thought one of the most interesting problems was when they gave them each. It was, I think it was their second to last challenge, and all of them right towards the end. they gave everyone an individual challenge for their specific weaknesses for the most part, strengths and weaknesses. Like Michelle was told that all she had to do was go into this room and talk to these two parents and convince them to sign their youngest child up to go through the process later on. But then she finds out they are the parents of the girl that she had killed in the first episode. So she has to tell them, your daughter is dead, but sign up your next daughter to take the process.
Yes. Oh, that was pretty brutal,
That
but it was very well done.
there was
I
that.
really, I really thought I don't know how they're going to write themselves out of this.
These are some really smart writers, though,
Yeah.
because at no point do I feel like they copped out.
Yeah, no, I think all the challenges were really good. Um, and I was pleasantly surprised because I think originally the show was kind of pitched to me as well. It's similar to the Hunger Games, but I don't feel. I was pleasantly surprised at how different it is from that.
You know what? If you like the Hunger Games, you'll probably like this, but it has a close enough vibe that you'll probably enjoy both. But they're two very distinct things.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to the personal challenges, Fernando, the guy in the wheelchair, his challenge was to come up with a new challenge, a new test, and he says, "Well, what if we, you know, go to them and we try and hit them with some really devastating news to see if whether or not they want to stay in the trial?" And he actually winds up eliminated by his own test at the very end.
Yeah. Yeah, that was what we talked about before. I thought it was great irony.
My favorite, though, hands down, was Raphael's test because Raphael, he's stealing cubes. He's just kind of an all around asshole. He's
Oh
pretty
yeah.
he's pretty unlikable. He's very much I'm not. He's like that reality show dick. He's all like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to win, kind of guy.
Yeah.
And then his challenge is just, well, there are these two switches on opposite ends of a hallway, and they both need to be flicked at the same time. So your whole challenge is your make and break challenge is just find someone willing to help you.
Yep. That was it.
That was all he had to do, and it was such a nail biter because he had burned just about every bridge.
Yeah.
Because
And
either
oh, it was great.
because either he had personally scorned someone, or they had just watched him be a douche canoe, and nobody was willing to help him. Eventually, he talked Fernando into helping him out, and it was super down to the wire.
Yeah. Yeah. And he really it's blackmailing Fernando kind of is the way that he ends up doing it.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful in its simplicity. These
Yeah.
last challenges, because some of them have been really complex. There's like a prison experiment, or there's nerve gas, or there's these logic puzzles, or there's one where they present them with a crime scene, and they have to solve the crime scene in X amount of time, and those are all these really complicated things. But then they get to the very end, and they're just so elegant in their simplicity, but they're also so devious.
Yeah. I also liked the one of you all have to come to a consensus about one of you in this group must be eliminated and you have to come to a consensus about who it is. And it was sort of like, yes, Marco is of course the one who's going to be like, I don't want to be that guy, but he's in a wheelchair. Come on. And it's like, yep, that's a perfect demonstration of what a dick that character is.
Right, and then, well, there's this. Here's this bag, and it's full of coins, and there's one fewer coin in this bag, and there are people in this room. If you have a coin, you can leave this room. If you don't have a coin, you go back. And they made it look like it was this discussion they had to have, but then you have Joanna who just palmed a coin,
Yep, yep. Because
and
she was the one who was supposed to be eliminated, but she palmed a coin and conned everybody.
bamboozled again.
um, and though they did also sort of imply that if the group didn't come to a consensus, if they just said no, we're not eliminating anybody, then everybody in that group would be eliminated.
Yeah, because they've got to find some way to force them to do it because it's this really fluid dynamic of can I trust these people with me, but I have to compete to win, but I also have to be careful not to burn too many bridges because I might be relying on these people one or two challenges from now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very well done. I think people actually who like Survivor would like this show.
Yes, this I don't watch reality TV, but
I
I
don't
think
really either.
but from the little bit of reality TV I've seen over my life, it's a lot like that, except it's scripted and it's not. Well, reality TV is still scripted. Sorry, guys. Your Survivor and your Real World, they are all scripted.
But yeah, I mean if you like that kind of show, I mean if you like Survivor, then I think you might like this just from a dynamics of competitive groups standpoint.
If it was like, hey, I like Survivor, but what if there is a much less shallow and crappy version of this? What can I go watch that show? And then you get 3%.
Yep. So I am definitely really looking forward to seeing if they do a second season. I definitely want to watch it if it comes out.
Yeah, you know, maybe we will. We do get a second season, let's definitely revisit it on the show, and hopefully by then we'll have our shit together and we can finally do this series and by extension all of the good people of Brazil. Give them
do
the
do them
treatment they deserve.
justice.
Do
They
them
do their due.
justice. I'm sorry, Brazil. All of Brazil. I feel like I have failed you all.
Yes, I apologize as well. But I do just want to say again, thank you, Brazil, for this wonderful show.
It was a delightful show, and we wish that we were in better headspaces to talk about it. But we've had like a perfect storm of how can this podcast get screwed up this week?
Yeah, for
'Cause
sure.
I haven't been sleeping. I'm still going purely on. This is my second pot of Earl Grey. So
Oh
I've been,
yeah, you're a tea drinker, not a coffee drinker.
oh, I'm a coffee drinker too. It's just I've learned that if I hit the coffee too hard, I burn myself out too fast.
Uh,
Like coffee, because I will do coffee if I need it, but I've learned that with coffee, if you're not careful and you don't pace yourself correctly, there's this big spike and then there's a much steeper crash. Same with anything real sugary. As I used to do like Mountain Dew sodas. I never really did energy drinks because they taste awful. But I've learned that if I over caffeinate, it just makes me really jittery. Not necessarily jittery, but it just makes me feel like I'm just like wired, and it may not necessarily help me work. But I've learned that if I drink tea, especially black tea, then it doesn't have quite that same peak, but it also doesn't have the crash, so it's a much more even sort of perk.
I see.
So to all of you, I guess high school and college students or anyone out there who pulls late nights, put down the coffee, put down the Mountain Dew, grab yourself a kettle and a pot and a few boxes of Earl Grey, and you'll have a much better experience. That's not to say coffee does not have its place. Coffee absolutely has its place. It's just better used sparingly than tea. Tea's a much more reliable. It's more clean burning, I should say. It's more efficient. So there we go. You have a study tip. So if you manage to make it to or you just hit the hour mark. So if you manage to sit through an hour of crappy podcast, you have you have some semi-useful life advice if you are in a situation where you're not sleeping.
Yeah, I um caffeine doesn't really seem to affect me much one way or the other, as far as I can tell. So,
I'm
oh
I'm
well.
I'm normally a tea person, and then when I started grad school, I switched to coffee, and I was told that black tea has roughly the same amount of caffeine in it as does a cup of coffee, which is bullshit. So we had a coffee pot in the grad lounge, And I'm like, okay, well, if coffee's about the same level as caffeine as tea, I can drink it the same way I can drink tea, which is like 2 or 3 cups in an hour.
Huh.
So, like, especially if I'm just fidgeting, I just need something to drink and it's there. I think at one point I killed over half a pot in about 30 minutes. I could taste the color 12. I was so fucking I was so wired, and but I'm just it was basically I just went to full on overload, and then about an hour later I just completely crashed. So I had to learn. I had to be much more careful about regulating.
Yeah.
I had to be more careful about regulating the coffee. I know most of undergrad I relied on tea more than I relied on coffee, just because tea was easier to make at that point because I didn't own a coffee maker, but I had a metal teapot. I found like I got like a secondhand kettle somewhere, so I was able to just throw the kettle on and then just make myself tea. Although it's not uncommon for me to like make myself a cup of tea and then either forget I made it or pass out, and so I'd wake up 5 or 6 hours later to this cup of tea that had been steeping for about 6 hours and is now ice cold. And I'm just like, well, I can't just let it go to waste, so I would just down this nasty, just abomination of a tea drink.
I do that with diet soda, or at least I used to. I used to pour myself multiple diet soda drinks, and then I'd find it sometimes days later, and of course it would be completely flat and lukewarm by then. And but I'm like, no, can't waste it. Then I just guzzle it down.
You just power through it.
Yeah. Um.
We are not.
Oh,
We
but
are not weak. We would make it to the offshore because we can power through the nasty tea. We have that conviction and that self-sacrifice and that sense of duty. We would make it. I think. No, wait, would we make it? Maybe we'd make it.
I would not make it simply on the grounds of being mentally ill.
I mean, you could argue that half
I
the
think you'd
people.
probably be leaving me behind.
No, I don't know. I might have.
Then
I might
again,
make
I
it.
don't know. Maybe they'd think my intelligence outweighs my mental illness. I don't know.
Well, everyone who makes it is kind of a sociopath in one way or the other, so they seem to not really care about mental illness so much. It's not like they have to worry about it getting passed down. It's not like, oh shoot, she's got like schizophrenia. You don't, but hypothetical person in the scenario has like schizophrenia, and there's a chance that can get passed down. But it's like she's not procreating anyway. They've got super science on the island. They even mentioned that the guy in the wheelchair, they have the technology to allow him to walk again. So if you were to have a mental illness, they might even be able to treat that fairly well. So they say like, well, you've got the base intelligence, and it's not too hard to deal with the mental illness. So you could still very well be an asset if you could just hold it together for like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, that's true. I do interview well, apparently. I somehow manage to fool employers into hiring me if I get to the interview portion.
So there you go. So if any potential employers listening
Usually.
to this podcast, and you made it to the hour point, and you're still all like, "Hey, that Ivy lady, she's worth hiring." Now you know it's a lie. It's all been a lie.
It's all a lie. It is. It's a terrible lie.
I'm told I interview well. I'm really hit and miss on interviews because I'm almost too honest during interviews because I'm fairly straightforward. It's not that I can't fluff. It's just I don't like fluffing, and so it's kind of hard the for me to do like the pep yourself up kind of like, well, these are, I don't have any weaknesses. My sir,
Actually,
that's a lovely
that
tie
is
you have.
probably the worst answer of all to say you don't have any weaknesses.
My
But
my go to with weaknesses is that I push myself too hard, which is very true. Like I'm not sure if I've told this story on the podcast, but at one point during undergrad, I actually pushed myself to the point of a
yeah,
blackout.
that's probably a good answer.
You can work me to the point of a blackout. I've done
I
it before.
Yeah, and they'll be like, "Oh, good, yeah, sign us up for that."
You will make a good meat machine.
Right?
Machine
Yeah.
made out of meat. We will put We will put work in. We will put instructions into you, and work will come out.
But then I guess the other thing about like trying to come up with whether or not you would survive the process is the other thing about like whether or not either of us would survive the process is that we don't have this background of living for 20 years in abject poverty, you know,
Right.
surviving on the street.
I feel like that would almost make us better equipped to make it through the process than living our suburban lifestyles.
Yeah, quite possibly. Though personally, I don't think I would have survived 20 years living that way.
There we go. See, like it's already weeding people out. So if you manage to make it that far, you're already better off than you would be right now.
Yeah.
Is the whole society just one giant process?
Mm-hmm.
Mind blown. God, I hope that comes out all right, and the mic picked that up okay. God, I hope it did.
It does sort of beg the question again of how much of our society is like that process because you know we the way our society is structured and the hoops that different people have to go through in order to make it to what is considered successful.
Well, the more I've been looking into this, the more I'm realizing that while merit can carry you, at the same time, sometimes if you're born in poverty, there are so many hurdles to living in poverty that if you're born middle or upper class, you just can't understand. And it's there's a lot of penalties in society just for being poor, and it's so hard to dig yourself out that you can be intelligent and capable and hardworking, and you can just get hit with a couple of circumstances one after another, and you can just be stuck in that poverty forever, and it's not in any way your fault.
Yeah.
Like I was listening to NPR did a series on this, and I'm pretty sure it's online. It's got to be online. You should be able to go look it up. Let me go see if I can remember the name of that really quick. Just look up. I got my computer. Google NPR series poverty in America. This is the exciting part of the podcast where you get to listen to me watch screens load. This is what gets us the rewards right here.
Yes.
Here we go.
I
It's called Busted:
uh,
America's Poverty Myths, a new series from On the Media.
sounds good. I'll
Yes,
check it out.
it's things like, well, there's this woman, she was frugal, she worked really hard,
Well,
she was really
is there
capable.
anything else we want to talk about with 3%?
Yeah, I almost got real super derailed there. Let's see, we uh, covered cinematography's good, acting's pretty good, uh, dub dub is fine, but it comes with all of the normal caveats for watching a live action dub. It's a lot easier to dub an animated series than a live action one, so get ready for that cognitive dissonance. Due to no fault of the cast, entirely just the mechanics of doing that. It's a really smart show. If you like dystopian stuff, if you like watching smart people do smart things, if you like a lot of emphasis on character, if you like all those things, go watch it. Did I lose you?
Oh, yeah, you're cutting in and out a little bit on my end. So sometimes I'm kind of only getting half of what you're saying. I think it must be my internet connection. It's been spotty lately.
Yeah, well, our brains are kind of spotty for this episode, so once again, I apologize. Uh, well, my mentality is that we've done the work for this episode. We have to put something out because if we keep postponing it, it's just going to negatively impact any other projects we want to work on.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
think so.
yeah, you know what? Like we're gonna have not every episode's gonna be a great one. We're gonna have about something bad every now and again, and that's okay because we're still learning. We're not getting any money from this. We're doing this entirely as a passion project. We have no followers, so uh, yeah, sometimes things are not going to line up right, and you're going to put out something, and it's going to be, it might be passable, and sometimes passable has to be
So
good enough.
so what you're saying is that doing a podcast, it's a process.
It is in itself a product. Is this what we go? Is that it? Is that our big going out moment? Is that the mic drop and walk away moment?
I'm sorry.
Is
I'm
this cue the
sorry.
Who?
I know
Yeah.
I'm awful.
All right. Are we both too? I think we're
But
both pretty fried.
yeah, that's what I'm ending with.
That's what we're ending with. Yeah. So I did my whole spiel about how sometimes you just gotta get projects out the door, and now we're gonna go and discuss what our next episode's gonna be, and maybe plan out ways where it'll go smoother than this one did.
Yes, hopefully.
And I can say my only hope is that the audience got some sort of perverse Schadenfreude-based joy in watching us fail completely for an hour and 12 minutes.
Indeed.
All right, goodbye,
Yes.
lovely audience. We hope we see you next time. If anyone's still there, we hope to see you next
Yep.
time.
Bye bye.
Bye.